Special thanks to the Christian Children's Home of Ohio for sponsoring the third place. For more information, go to ccho.org. That's ccho.org.
Christian Children's Home of Ohio provides a safe environment where children can find healing, discover hope, and experience unconditional love through certified trauma therapies designed to meet the needs of each child. Our 165-acre Worcester campus includes 4 cottages that are home to as many as 46 at-risk youth whose lives have been turned upside down by abuse, neglect, and trauma. We focus on helping residents build skills to live productive lives and reintegrate back into the community.
Hey guys, it's us. In the studs with my dudes.
Is that our start?
Yeah.
Yes, that in the studs with your dudes. That's me. I'm the dudes, and this is the
And
Third
Martin.
Place podcast.
My dudes, Brian and Martin.
There he is.
There he is. He had to come with
Duluth. This is the Third Place podcast. I'm Brian Dolan. That's Lauren Cuevas.
Hello. Home is your first place, work is your second place, and this is your third place, where the Christian community in Northeast Ohio gathers.
Now, we are going to cover a little 4th of July biz here in a few minutes, some
Because
news.
it's the 4th of July.
But first, this lady with me here has got a lot of stories that I still haven't heard
tell
yet.
all of them.
Well, no.
You want me to tell all of them?
What are you going to start with? You've got something for me.
So first of all, my sister texted me last night. She's been listening to the first episode of the podcast in like spurts, like on her commute or something. First of all, she loves it. She called me out of the blue.
I'm not surprised.
I know. And she was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. And I was like, okay, well, I was doing this for 2 years. Did you not listen to my radio show?
What did she say to that?
She's like, no.
What? Come on,
Well,
sister.
it's just, it's time difference. And
We can say her name, right?
yeah, Melissa, get it together.
Come on, Melissa.
But anyway, she's a big supporter now. So we can't rag on her too much.
Okay, love it.
She texted me last night. Well, no, first of all, she said, my favorite quote from the episode was, it's a chicken house.
Well, it kind of is.
Your chicken coop is a chicken house.
It's very large.
A chicken home.
It started raining when I was making it, so I just got inside. And I just sat down for a while. There's plenty of room.
Okay, so there was that. Then she also said that we need to, in February, do a Olympic special. And I was like, we did that on our radio show. And she's like, well, I didn't listen, so you need to do it again. Because she really liked our talk about cheerleading.
Whether it's a sport?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a tough one in my house because my wife was a cheerleader. So I have my own thoughts on that. But so she wants us to do our own coverage.
Yeah, let me actually just read what she said because you guys are going to really like this.
Because it's got to be the Winter Olympics, clearly based on the calendar. And I have a lot of thoughts
February.
about Winter Olympics.
Yeah, it's February. Okay, she said, okay, let listeners pick a handful of sports and you guys have to watch final rounds and do commentary. Patreon members can vote and pick.
Oh, because we actually could
Yeah.
broadcast it, essentially,
Yes.
now that we do that. Yeah.
We
could
watch
do
it
that.
live. We could do a live stream of us watching. Well, you know how big of a deal the opening ceremonies were for France. So we could do a live stream of the opening ceremonies.
They were so weird.
Yeah, people were really in a tizzy. So we can do that again because
Well,
they're probably going to be weird again. Where are they? You don't
Somewhere wintry, Canada, maybe, Siberia, somewhere. I'm not certain who's hosting them this year. I should know this. But the only way I'll do that is if we can watch and critique curling together. Because I have a lot of thoughts about curling and the fact that that's allowed to be an Olympic sport.
The little brooms, yeah.
Like some dude who looks like he was just hanging out at the pub comes out and
It's the everyday man.
I know it's the everyday man, but compare that to Simone Biles or something, and you're just like, you're not both Olympians. You can't say that.
Well, it's not their fault that they allowed that into the Olympics.
I still have a problem with shuffleboard on ice.
Well, okay. Well, what about Apolo Anton Ohno? You know my favorite guy, the speed skater.
Speed skating's wild. They wear the hoods.
Obsessed with him. I was obsessed with him.
And they have the
We're
world's
gonna have to get
biggest
Gigi
thighs.
on and ask her.
They do. They have the world's biggest thighs because of the going around
And they
the thing.
zip around, and they're slanted sideways, skating around.
I can hardly skate straight.
I don't. I stay flat on my feet.
Yeah. But you're into speed skating? I didn't know that.
Well, not anymore. I used to be. I was really into Apolo Anton Ohno. Probably for other reasons, not the skating.
Is
if I can be honest.
Is he a handsome guy?
Yeah.
I guess we're going to have to watch that
Yes.
together.
Well, he's retired. You know, I was also really into Shaun White. Who isn't, though?
Is that a skier?
Snowboarder.
Snowboarder, yeah.
Yeah.
Snowboarding's looks pretty hard.
He's married to a model now, so no chance for me.
Not that you're keeping up with it. Now, if curling is a sport in the Winter Olympics, why isn't, as they'd say it here in Northeast Ohio, sled riding? Sledding. Shouldn't sledding be a sport?
Well, they have bobsled.
No. I mean,
Take off the bob.
like a red plastic,
Just zip them around.
and you have to go down a really steep hill and hit jumps and
Well,
stuff.
that's just kind of by luck.
Get out one of those tubes that no one can control. Sledding and curling.
Yeah. Didn't you tell a story where you ran into a tree or something? Is that you?
No, I mean, I don't have a lot of padding. And so anytime you go sledding,
Okay, you don't need to brag.
it's not, don't be anti-skinny. Skinny people deserve a lot of respect and love. You know how hard it is to sit in a
That's a
school
lot.
desk?
Oh,
It's like
your
a hard thing, and
tush.
you just sit there, and there's no tush, and so you can't get comfortable. It's impossible. And so I went with the kids.
It must be really hard for you.
It is. It's really hard. So
It must be really hard to be fully accepted by society.
well, I mean, when you're sitting down, yeah. And how about going camping?
This is the
We went
craziest
camping
thing
once.
you've ever said.
And then you lay on the ground, and guess what? You're totally uncomfortable because who likes the feeling of your
Camping
ulna
and
and
laying on the
radius?
No. Camping and laying on the ground is a problem for everybody, not just thin people.
But imagine it's my hip bone. There it is, slamming into my nerves or whatever. And my femur. It's not doing
your
well.
nerves.
Well, and so we went sledding once, and the kids there was a jump, and I just forgot that I was grown up, and I was sitting down in this plastic red thing, went up on the jump, slammed down, and I feel like I couldn't sit for a week. I could have broken my tailbone. But I was just too ashamed to go to the doctor.
But those kind of injuries are really painful, where you can't
Yeah.
sit. Going up and down stairs is hard.
I'm still not going to go to the doctor. How do you bring that up? So anyway, I think I broke my tailbone. And what do they do? Put you in a cast? I don't think so.
I've brought up a lot of worse things at the doctor, as you know.
How much do you want to talk about here?
I can talk about. I have no shame.
Good.
Hemorrhoids. I've given birth twice, so
Yeah.
it's kind of inevitable. You know what I mean? I had to talk to my doctor about it.
Your local doctor, and he pulled out his phone and started pulling up photos for you.
Okay, not his phone. His little work tablet. And he's like, let's look together. And pulled up pictures.
As if
medical
you-
pictures.
As if you wanted to see that.
Yeah, I know what they feel like. I don't need to see pictures of hemorrhoids. He pulled them up on his little tablet.
And you're like, dude, I don't
And
need
he's
to
like,
see
ooh,
their
let's look at
hemorrhoids.
this one. And then, yeah, exactly.
You're like, could you just fix mine?
Yeah. I don't need to see a fake diagram of them. I have my own.
Yeah, I don't need to understand them.
Yeah. But it was, and he's younger than me, first of all. He's a male, second of all. Make it worse, he listened to our former show. He let me know that at the end. My Hemi
That's
doctor.
horrible.
My Hemi doctor, listening.
Wow. Yeah, that's awkward. When I got my vasectomy, I was terribly afraid somebody would recognize me. I was just
my
praying, Lord, help
gosh.
no one know who I am, please, Lord. And he answered that prayer with a strong yes. That's no problem, Brian. I got you.
Yeah, he can help with that.
Wasn't looking out for you on yours,
No,
though.
my Hemis. I called him that to him. We just had to get real comfortable real quick.
Well, it's better than the full medical term.
Yeah.
Feels a little bit more like, it sounds more like an engine. Isn't it an engine?
And this was when I had to go because when I fell in the parking lot,
At the radio station.
radio
Yeah.
I slipped on ice and I fell and landed on my elbow. And my elbow's still not
It was a
as it
mess.
once was. It's still a little tender sometimes. But it was bad for a couple months. And our boss, Josh Villa, was like, you need to go to the doctor. I was like, fine. So I went initially for that, but it was my first time visiting him, so I had to go through all the stuff. And he was like, so I see here you had hemorrhoids. I was like, hey, stick it to the elbow. Stick to the elbow.
That is rude.
Well, it's like an intake. We had to talk about everything.
Well, no, but
No,
the rest of us have been to the doctor, and they don't pick out.
yeah, because when you do all your forms, you got to list all the stuff.
This was the doctor brought that up.
Yeah.
So you come in for the elbow, and the doctor's
Well, I
like,
had a lot of stuff to go through.
let's look at your chart here and find something embarrassing. Let's talk about. Do you want to talk about your hemorrhoids again, Lauren? Should we talk about that?
I voluntarily put it on the paper.
Well, still, I put stuff on the paper they didn't bring up. I just feel like you were treated
But
unfairly.
it was just I was like, yeah, so I slipped on ice. Embarrassing number one. Embarrassing number two, yeah, I've got hemorrhoids. Thanks.
So, did you break your elbow?
No.
Okay.
He poked around on it and squished it and stuff.
And everything was fine, just bruised.
Yeah, just bruised.
Yeah, I have asked our friend Dr. Mike Chen, who used to be on our former show pretty regularly. I asked him if, when they're finished with patients, if they all gather like in the back and go, "Wait till you hear about this guy.
Probably.
You wouldn't believe what was wrong with him."
Yeah, it's just a wild experience because I
He
had
says they don't.
a male doctor, which was not new for me. I've had a lot of male doctors, but the nurse was also male. I was like, "Hey, sorry." Sorry.
They somebody
Like,
in
I
back
had
was
to
like,
apologize for my medical dysfunctions.
But I always picture someone in back as like, let's see, we got the gal here with the hemorrhoids. Let's pair her up with the men. Let's
We got
young
a head
gal,
lady.
male nurse. Let's go. Get in there. Mike Chen claims they don't talk about us.
Well, Mike Chen doesn't talk about it.
I think they talk
We're gonna
about
have to ask
us.
Dr. Bernard. I bet you Dr. Bernard, he's be chatting.
We'll get him sitting right here in this
Yeah,
couch
he's gonna
over
be,
here,
he chats, I'm sure.
and we'll.
If I was a doctor, I'd be chatting.
Oh yeah, I'd keep a
If
little
we
notebook.
were doctor colleagues, we would be chatting.
Oh, we'd be talking about all of you. If you had some weird medical problem, we'd be talking about it. We'd have like a list of
How could you not?
weird stuff. Wait to hear what happened to me. Okay. Any other stories you want to get caught up on?
No.
That's it?
Yeah, that's enough for me today.
That was a lot. That was a lot. I'm proud of you for being so personal. Look at us. This is
I'm
this
a
is
pretty
how
open book.
this is how you
really.
grow in your faith. You share deep personal things, so you know that you're not alone.
I'm not going to share with my small group about my hemis, Brian. Thanks, though.
But maybe, pain is God's invitation to grow spiritually. So maybe this trial in your life has helped you grow spiritually. I don't know. I'm just bringing it up. Was that whole thing for Melissa, your sister, in some respects?
Yeah, she'll like that.
I think she'll like that one. Okay, shifting gears.
We do text about hemorrhoids sometimes.
Oh, I was like, with our
and you?
listeners? Me?
No,
No.
me and my sister, of course.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Got to talk to somebody about it.
as
With all of you.
well, as the kids say, you got to keep it real.
Him,
Is that what you do? Keep it real?
I guess.
Okay, shifting
It's 4th of
gears.
July.
It is 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July.
It should be, when we release this one, it should actually be the 4th of July. And I wanted to throw a little statistic about church to you from our friends at Lifeway Research. No, it's not a time machine where I'm back in the 90s looking at paper. I still insist, even though it's 2025, on looking at actual paper, not any screens.
Yeah, before we started, he made me print this.
I mean, no one makes you do anything. Nobody puts baby in the corner, and nobody makes Lauren do anything.
Yeah, you're in the corner, so.
But I asked politely, and you agreed. So here's the story. According to Lifeway Research, most pastors, as in 56% of pastors, say it's important to incorporate patriotic elements into worship services the week of July 4th to celebrate America.
I think it's a little bit dramatic.
They say
Say
it's important to incorporate patriotic elements into worship services. So let's start here. Do you have a feeling about patriotic things happening the Sunday around the 4th of July?
I think I would go to church and I would understand why they're doing it. Like, it was like 4th of July weekend. I don't think it's important or necessary.
So you wouldn't be offended if you went through church this Sunday and nobody sang God Bless America or put up a flag or did any sort of... You'd be okay with that?
Yeah, and I think the church I go to, I don't think they're going to be doing that. We'll see.
So what would be an appropriate recognition of our country's birthday in church, do you think?
I think you can just, say it. Recognize it from the stage. I don't think we need to be, singing God Bless America.
Yeah, because some churches will actually sing
Yeah, I
a
understand.
patriotic song. Do you have a problem with that?
I think it's a little funky. I don't think we're there to celebrate our country. I think we're there to be in communion with other Christians and to worship God together and the reading of the Word.
Yeah, and that's where, if it's a worship service, and in the midst of a worship service, you're you're singing praises to something other than God, I'm a little concerned.
It's a little weird.
Now, I don't think it'd be idolatry. I understand why people do it.
Because I'm fine with it singing other times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's not like I'm anti-singing those songs.
Actually, Sarah got mad at me because in my Spotify playlist is
Oh, great.
Ray Charles did perhaps the best
Yeah.
rendition of
We know.
America the Beautiful, I believe it is. And it starts with a snare. And Sarah's like, what is this? Honey, it's Ray. It's Ray
It's
Charles.
Ray, my friend Ray.
It's such a good version of that song. But, I mean, I'd be okay with a pastor, like during announcements or even during prayer or whatever, saying, hey, we're blessed here in this country
Yeah,
to have
totally.
freedom to gather here and worship. So in the midst of our prayers today, we're going to thank the Lord for the blessings we have of freedom in America.
That's great.
You feel good about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the singing patriotic songs.
Yeah, it's just not the time or place. Not that I'm obviously against patriotic songs. I think we can and should do those at the right time and place. I just don't think that church is that time and place.
So someone is pointing at you on the screen and like yelling,
That's
how
okay.
dare you, Lauren Cuevas?
That's okay. Go ahead.
You and your Hemis hating my
my
the
gosh.
patriotic song in my church. Are you mad at them if they do that?
No, that's fine. We all have our own opinions.
So this is
I'm
not.
allowed to have my opinions, and you're allowed to have your opinions.
So you're not going to disfellowship someone over this.
No,
But to you, it's an issue of who's the object of worship.
that's right. And I don't think even if my church did it this weekend, like we sang a song like God Bless America, I don't think I'd leave my church either. If there was like a pattern of doing this like all the time, there'd be some conversations needing to be had. But okay, I would be like, oh, okay, that's not the choice that I would make if I was leading this church, but I'm not leaving the church because of that.
Yeah, me neither. In fact, Sarah and I think, were members of a church where there may have been one patriotic song, and there was intentionally an American flag put up for that Sunday of worship, and I was fine. I didn't like raise my hand or
Sure.
objection or some sort of awkward thing. It's just the thing.
Yeah.
But again, I think worship ought to be not primarily, exclusively focused
Yes.
on the Lord.
That's right.
And our Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. So I think that should be the focus. If you do your patriotic thing, God bless you. I'm a little taken back at the 56%.
56 about important is a little.
It's important to incorporate. No, is it okay to do it? I would say sure. But the idea of it being important, I don't know why there's so many people saying that. But God bless you, and God bless America if you disagree. How about that? Before we move on to our interview today, I do want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. Oh my goodness, I love our sponsors. And I'm shuffling.
Oh my gosh.
There they are.
Some
God
things
bless
never change.
our sponsor. Special thanks to our startup partner, the Christian Children's Home of Ohio. As you all know, James 1:27 reminds us that pure religion means caring for orphans in their distress, in part, is what that says there. The Christian Children's Home of Ohio lives out that mission by offering trauma-informed care and a place for refuge for children who have experienced deep hurt. They meet both emotional and spiritual needs with love and professional care. Learn how you can join in this mission. We're wearing our Christian Children's Home of Ohio shirts today, drinking out of our
Yay!
mugs as well. Go to ccho.org, ccho.org. And who is our interview today? Have we decided that?
Yeah, Dr. Glen Duerr.
Dr. Glen Duerr chatting with us just moments ago, actually, about Iran. We'll get to that here in just a moment. Well, here we are on the Third Place podcast. Super excited to have one of our old friends. It's not a reference to his age, just we've known him for a very long time. He is the chair of the History and Government Department at Cedarville University, also a professor of international studies at Cedarville. He is Dr. Glen Duerr. Welcome to the Third Place podcast, my friend.
It's great to be with you.
And since we've already released kind of our little fun conversation, we have everyone knows you did not wear the tie for us today. That you just do that out of habit.
In part, I do, but it's just shared with others.
It's a nice tie. I like it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need your help figuring out what in the world's going on with Iran. Okay, so I think we have to start at this point. I think there's still some people going, why in the world did Israel, out of nowhere, shoot missiles into Iran?
There's a significant backdrop between countries, and some history is useful because Iran, Persia is one of the longest standing empires in the world, and there's a lot in the Old Testament that refers to the Medo-Persian Empire after the Babylonians, and that's a significant place and power in world affairs, and a long-standing empire that has continued as a country. The name changed from Persia to Iran in 1935, and it is worth noting that when Israel declared its independence in May of 1948, while Iran was opposed to it, it was not part of any coalition to fight against Israel, and in fact, the Shah and the Prime Minister of Israel had a pretty friendly relationship through 1979. That is when the Islamic Revolution occurred in Iran and hardline 12 Shia Muslims took power, and really sparked a major division between Iran and Israel and the United States. Iran, however, in the 1980s was pretty preoccupied with Iraq. There was an 8-year war with Iraq from 1980 to 1988. But really, as Iran developed a nuclear weapon and moved into the 21st century, they really focused their ire on Israel, regular anti-Israel, anti-America parades, showcases, things of that nature. And unlike some of the other nuclear programs elsewhere in the Middle East, like Iraq or Syria or Libya, where their nuclear facilities were typically in one location and were bombed and taken out, Iran has nuclear facilities in over 130 locations. And when October the 7th happened and Iran continued to fund terrorism against Israel, against US and allied troops in places like Syria and Iraq, deeply problematic, obviously. A former Iranian president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, also said that he would wipe, quote unquote, Israel off the map, a reference to nuclear weapons. And so when Iran directly attacked Israel for the first time in April of 2024 and then again in October, the Israelis are looking at this and saying, this is deeply, deeply problematic. What are we going to do? And so Israel opted to go after some of the major nuclear sites of Iran, especially when the negotiations between the Trump administration and the Iranian regime fell through. And so that's the reason for the timing.
So now, is there any doubt as to whether or not Iran has been funding terrorism throughout the Middle East?
No, there's really no doubt, especially with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and to some degree in the West Bank, both Palestinian territories, as well as Ansar Allah, the Houthis in Yemen, and a range of militias in Syria and Iraq. The funding clearly comes from Iran. Not major funding in some cases, but at the same time, weaponry is provided, it keeps leaders in place, things of that nature. And so we shouldn't say that Iran is wealthy by any means. It's a pretty poor country across its total, but it does have a significant web of foreign funding to these militia and terrorist organizations throughout the Middle East.
Now, help us better understand the U.S. involvement. Why did we get involved and send in our own missiles?
The United States has often supported Israel in terms of its Iron Dome and other defense systems like David's Sling historically as a means of protecting itself. Other Middle Eastern allies like Jordan have also helped in that way as well, but there's a strong and ongoing relationship with the United States in that regard. The other component is that the Trump administration really tried to negotiate with the Iranian regime to end its nuclear weapons program. And when that failed, that's where we saw the B-2s being deployed from Missouri all the way into Tehran and other major locations within Iran.
Well, you know, I've been watching all these years, and I've been surprised that the regime in Iran has been able to maintain power. I've heard whispers of young people in the country wanting a change, wanting to move away from Muslim rule. To what extent is that still an issue, and why have they been able to maintain control?
It's a brilliant question, so let's back up a little bit, roughly 92 million people, and it's growing really fast. I was looking recently at my 2012 PowerPoint on Iran, and at that point it was 75 million. Now it's 92. And it's growing really rapidly. The median age is under 30 in Iran, so it's a very young population.
Wow.
And Iran is also not homogenous. Roughly 67% are ethnically and linguistically Persian or have some dialectic offshoot of Persian. There are Arabs, there are Azeris, Balokis, Turkmen, Kurds, a lot of different ethnic minorities, linguistic minorities, especially around the periphery of the country. Kind of think of it like an oval, and if you go around the periphery, a lot of people don't like the regime, never have, but have been under its thumb because they brutally cracked down on protests and dissent. And we even saw that in 2023 with Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old Kurdish woman that was killed by the morality police because she allegedly wasn't wearing her headscarf correctly. Over 300 people died in the clampdowns that the Iranian regime put there. But a lot of it's just ongoing power, the structures within the society, the inability to dissent. So let's look at a few different examples. Let's go back to 2009. So this is pre-Arab Spring. Pre-Arab Spring. There was what was known as the Green Revolution. And there was effectively a stolen election. All elections to some degree in Iran are stolen, but this one was more egregious. And I can dig into some more details because that's kind of an interesting point to people. Hey, it's authoritarian, but they hold elections. How does that work? Sometimes there are surprises in Iranian politics, but it's typically known who's going to win. But Mahmoud Ahmadinejad won re-election. I'll put one in air quotes. And a lot of young people, what they did is they went onto the streets, they wore green, they grew out their hair, all as means of protest against a regime that won't let them actually go onto the streets. They all drove their cars, they gummed up Tehran. It looked like for a moment that the regime would collapse, but it didn't. And then when the Arab Spring protests took place in Tunisia and Egypt and elsewhere into the Middle East, and leader after leader, Ben Ali, Hosni Mubarak, Muammar Gaddafi all fell. In Iran, it was quiet and remained so because they crushed the dissent so heavily. And as I just noted with Mahsa Amini in 2022, a lot of protests took place, but the regime has a staying power. It's a great question because they seem to muddle through. They have economically underperformed. They've fomented wars with other countries, notably Israel. But some of that is to get the eyes of the population off their bad governance and say, hey, it's Israel's fault. It's the United States' fault. That's why we're not rich. And it's done enough to keep them in power, bearing in mind, again, only 2/3 really want them there in the first place, and a lot of young people and others within that 2/3 have said we don't want anything to do with it either. And another note is that the gospel is moving in Tehran and other major cities pretty heavily right now. A lot of other people are moving away from the mosque. A lot of the mosques are reportedly empty. And so how does the regime keep in power? It has the guns. There's enough in place right now, but it is wobbly, I would argue.
So then what's the outcome of those missile strikes from Israel and the U.S.? Are we going to see any big changes of any consequence?
It's hard to know because how much of the nuclear material was actually destroyed. The Trump administration has claimed it's largely been wiped out. They did indeed hit some of the biggest targets, there's no doubt, but Chinese cargo jets were flying over Iran the day before. Some Iranian government officials have said we removed the uranium-235, the enriched uranium, away from those locations. Others have said within the government, yes, you got us pretty badly. So there's really a mixed signal here. And so the question is, to what extent has Iran's nuclear program been decimated? Because Iraq, Syria, Libya, it was typically known, okay, it's in this location, Israel has bombed it, there's no real output beyond that. Libya gave up its nuclear weapons in 2004, but Iran is just, there are a lot of other sites. I mean, the United States hit 3 big ones, there are 127 others.
Oh, wow.
It's not to say that they're of equal magnitude, though. I think the United States and Israel hit the big ones and probably caused a lot of damage. And Israel has had for years a program to neutralize major top scientists in Iran, but we just don't know. And only the regime actually knows the extent to which they still have nuclear weapons or that capability. And I think that's going to be part of it. And so in terms of a prediction where things are going, I don't see any ground war. Iran, to think of it, again, 92 million people, is like Iraq and Afghanistan together. So no one wants a ground war. It'd just be, there are massive mountain ranges, very difficult terrain. It's a difficult population to know exactly who would they support and why. But I do see ongoing aerial exchanges, intelligence that leads to assassinations, neutralizations, things of that nature. I see that going on really for the next few months.
And there's always this element of the American population that's ready to say, here we go, World War III, it's happening. To what extent is there any concern in your mind about that?
The biggest concern is the CRINC countries, that is China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, that have really seemed to have formed an axis militarily and diplomatically in recent years. Iran, for example, has provided Shahad-3 missiles to Russia, as well as a range of different ammunition for their brutal war on Ukraine. China sits back and buys a lot of oil from these countries. North Korea has sent troops to Russia, as reportedly as China as well. And so in the midst of all this, what are the others doing and to what extent? And so that's the danger part of it. The other side, as I mentioned, it's very, very unlikely that there'll be any form of ground war. It's still unlikely at this point that this conflict links up with others. That's been a long ongoing fear of mine, just where civil wars on a map connect with one another and all of a sudden it explodes into something larger. But it is a dangerous moment where wars continue. Russia is going on 3.5 years since its invasion of Ukraine. If any of these happen to link or to grow, that's where there are historical precedents, because World War II didn't start kind of like that. It had a whole set of events that led up to it. World War I took really a summer of back and forth and declarations of war, and then eventually the conflict started. And we've seen that across a lot of different conflicts in the last 300 years. And so that's the real problem. As long as these continue and foment and don't stop, at some point they could link together, and then that's World War III. But right now, a lot of these are in a box. I don't think Iran wants a conflict, because that's really where the regime will be overthrown. They benefit from the status quo of having Israel as something of an enemy where they can rally and say, again, don't look at our bad governance, it's the Israelis, it's the fault of the Israelis, and so therefore keep us in power. And I think as long as that metric is there, there's a level to which it's not going to be World War III, but at the same time it's leaving in place a really brutal regime that even most people in Iran don't want. And so that's where some of this gets awfully, awfully tricky.
And now, as a professor of international studies, I know theology isn't your area of expertise, but how do you process it when you hear a certain group of Christians who are consistently trying to take Bible prophecy and just like slap it onto world events?
Yes, it's It's an area of interest of mine and an area of study, and it's, I think, really worth watching carefully, but at the same time knowing its limitations. And so typically what most Christians, that support this view in the United States, and I have some level of sympathy for it, I'll play that card, but I think we have to be careful with it. So they start with Ezekiel 36 and 37. They talk about the Valley of the Dry Bones, where Israel comes back to life. And it really is a miraculous story, because in the Old Testament we have the northern 10 tribes being taken by the Assyrians, the southern 2 tribes being taken by the Babylonians, who were later taken over by the Medo-Persians that we know did earlier in the podcast. And then Israel came back to life in May of 1948, some 2,500 years later. It's remarkable in that way. And so some Christians look at that and then they say, well, Ezekiel 37, Ezekiel 38's next. And that gets us into the War of Gog and Magog. And typically there they have a leader, a prince of Rosh, many say Russia, that is then aligned with Persia, Put, and Cush. And well, all of a sudden I just said the word Persia. And so they go, well, Russia and Iran, it's happening because these two are together. And that is true in Ezekiel 38, but that's not the full story either. It doesn't say what's there fully. So that's where we have to have an area of caution to read Scripture out fully, and then also to say, how do we interpret Ezekiel? This is a historic event. Some will also say it points to future events and prophetic events as well simultaneously. And again, I have some sympathy for that position, but at the same time, we have to take it, I think, carefully to read the Word of God very specifically. And it doesn't just say Russia and Iran. There's much more to it as well. But there is an attack on Israel that is miraculously prevented by the Lord, and then some will take it to get into events of the rapture and or Armageddon, depending on one's position eschatologically.
And kind of piggybacking off of that, you referenced earlier that the gospel is growing in Iran. Now, you hear a lot of anecdotal stories about this. To what extent do we have any sort of data that we know the gospel is growing there?
There are some good books that have come out on the topic where there are Iranian expats that have actually given maps to say, here's where the Bible has been given, locations in Tehran, here's where there are believers that gather, and a range of different missions organizations have all said the same thing. Now, is that groupthink? Do we have bona fide evidence? It's really difficult behind authoritarian doors. But let's get in a bit personal here. So I have been interviewed probably about a handful of times in the Iranian media. Why would they pick me? Who am I to them? And I have said consistently in Iranian media pro-American, pro-democratic, pro-Israeli, pro-Saudi things, and I really haven't been censored. Now, I haven't been asked to go back in some years, so maybe that is the form of censoring. But it tells me that there is some level of independent media in Iran where people are willing to take risks. I was also invited to address a group of students at Imam Sadiq University in Tehran. This is a high-level university where the regime sends its kids to basically train them. And they asked me to have a Zoom meeting with them ahead of the 2020 election. Again, I said pro-American things. I gave my assessment of Biden versus Trump in 2020. I even said, hey, with Trump, try and negotiate with the guy. And indeed they did in 2025. It didn't work out, but it's kind of interesting. He's a deal maker. I don't think he's puts anyone in a box. He met with Kim Jong-un, give it a go. And it's interesting that they did. But I also tried to use it as a gateway to the gospel a little bit. I was careful, and again, they didn't invite me back. but they were willing, and these are regime insiders, they were willing to listen to me, be respectful of me, probably because I have a PhD and probably because I teach, and I have written as well. I was asked to write a book chapter that they put together where I actually openly critiqued China very heavily and in a backdoor way critiqued their own authoritarian structure. And they again invited me to do all of this. So it tells me that there are people within Iran that want change, that are interested in things from the West. By the way, all of these young men and well, typically men, there are some women, typically men, they're all on Instagram. They're all on a range of different social media. They see what the rest of the world is like.
Yeah.
They see the money, they see the opportunity, they see the freedom, what's going on within my country. And so none of that gives you concrete evidence, but it's also to say there are these obvious ways where there's a real hunger and there is some evidence where it's really moving in Tehran. One estimate is that there are 1 million believers in Christ in Iran today. Again, I cannot give you, I cannot point to it because it's an underground church, but people reportedly are coming to know the Lord. Missions organizations keep focusing on it, and I've got my own kind of anecdotal stories where little old me has been asked to address people in Iran, and they've given me some level of license to do that.
Well, again, Dr. Glen Duerr is the chair of the Department of History and Government at Cedarville University, professor of international studies there as well, regular guest on Iranian state media, speaker at Iranian universities,
Not
and regular
state
guest
media.
here.
Independent
Not
media.
state media.
Independent media and guest here on the Third Place podcast. Obviously, we fit right into that group.
Yes.
We fit right there. Dr. Glen Duerr, thanks for your time today and your expertise. We just love hanging with you. And folks should go check out the school, right? Cedarville?
Absolutely. Cedarville.edu. A lot of construction right now. It's an awesome time on campus here. We're building a new 3-story building, part of an almost $200 million capital campaign. And so pardon the dust, but come on and visit. And it's a really exciting time on campus. We just have a new Scharnberg Business and Communications Center that opened in 2024, over 60,000 square feet, and it's going to be an even bigger building going up right now that will open in the fall of 2027. So just great things are happening. The Lord is blessing Cedarville University, and I'm just so thankful to be a part of it.
Again, go to cedarville.edu, cedarville.edu. Special thanks to Dr. Glen Duerr, and that will wrap up today's episode of the Third Place podcast.